Hi, welcome to today's economics class. I continue to look at international trade, and the focus in this particular video is free trade and globalization. What is free trade? Free trade is the total absence of government policies restricting import and export of goods and services. The following are some of the advantages of free trade. Number one is the theory of comparative advantage. Free trade enables countries to specialize in those goods where they have comparative advantage. Second advantage of free trade is countries are able to sell the surplus products. So countries have products which are in surplus sometimes, and so these products can be sold to other countries. Number three advantage of free trade is that imports are possible. Without international trade, many countries would have to go without certain products. For example, Zambia is able to access products such as cars and computers, even when those products are not primarily produced here in Zambia, thanks to international trade. Number four reason why international trade should be supported is the issue of economies of scale. Economies of scale means that if countries were to mass produce, of course producing in the areas where they have comparative advantage, mass production may lead to lower average costs and eventually lower prices. So economies of scale, mass production, so that these industries can sell to a wider world market and enjoy lower prices. The lower prices that comes as a result of lower production costs can then be translated into lower prices for goods and services. Number five reason for free trade or advantage of free trade is the increased competition. Competition leads to efficiency, and the quality of products that are produced tends to be high quality because of competition. We have an organization called World Trade Organization. The main function of this organization is to ensure that trade flows smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. That's the job of the World Trade Organization, that ensures that trade between countries flows smoothly. Apart from just looking at the advantages of free trade, there are certain arguments against free trade. So what are these arguments against free trade? The arguments against free trade, which can also be called reasons for protectionism or arguments in favor of protectionism. Why should countries protect their borders from absolute free trade? Number one, it's because countries may wish to protect their young industries or infant industries. They may wish to protect their strategic industries, or they may wish to protect their declining industries. Talking about young industries or infant industries, new industries may need protection in their early years against foreign competition that are already from firms that are already enjoying economies of scale. And this argument can be made that these industries should be protected until suitable economies of scale can be achieved. That's an argument against free trade. Argument against free trade number two is to prevent against dumping. No country wants to be a dumping site for products and services that are not required elsewhere. Hence, protectionism or argument against free trade. Argument against free trade number three is that governments may also wish to raise revenues from international trade by charging import taxes and excise duties that government charges on imported goods, and thereby they are able to raise revenue. Number 3 argument against free trade is national defense. Foreign producers should not be relied upon for production of defense goods, even if the goods can be produced at a lower cost from abroad, because defense is sensitive to any nation. So the production of defensive goods cannot be absolutely given to foreign producers. The last argument against free trade is job protection. Job protection. It is the desire for any country to protect existing jobs from threats by competition, foreign competition. The countries that tend to generate more jobs are those countries that are producing and exporting, rather than those countries that are importing. So sometimes countries may restrict trade because they want to protect local jobs. They may restrict the importation of certain goods because they want to encourage the local market to produce those goods and generate jobs. So these arguments against free trade leads us to talk about the barriers to free trade. The barriers to free trade, or the barriers to free international trade. So what barriers do countries put in place to restrict international trade? Barriers to free trade. Let's look at these barriers. Barrier number 1 are the tariffs and customs duties. What are tariffs? These are taxes on imported goods. The rise in the tax on an imported good makes that imported good expensive and so unattractive for the local market. The only problem that we have is that when governments place high tariffs and customs duties on imported goods as a way of restricting, there could be retaliation from other countries who will do the same and restrict free trade. Number 2 barrier to trade is quotas or import quotas. This is a restriction on the quantity of a product that is allowed to be imported into the country. It's not a total ban on the importation of a good, but just restricting the quantities of those particular goods that can be bought or imported into the country. Barrier to trade number 3 is called embargo. What are embargoes? An embargo is a total ban on the importation of a particular good. A total ban on the importation of a particular good is called an embargo. Other barriers to free trade or free international trade include hidden export subsidies. Hidden export subsidies. What does it mean? This means that government begins to assist exporters as a deterrent against imports. So government may subsidize local producers so that they can compete favorably on the international market and restrict the importation of goods from other countries. Other import restrictions, I'd put those 2 points as it's just one and the same point. But the last point, which is the barrier to free trade, is import restrictions. Import restrictions. So the next one you can put there is import restrictions. Import restrictions. What are import restrictions? This is where government makes the procedures of importation so complex as a way of restricting imports. Make regulations and procedures and documentation so complex that it makes it difficult for those who want to import, and those who want to export to the other country, to our particular country, find it difficult to bring their goods here because of the complex procedures and regulations by government. So those are the barriers to free trade. Let me now move on and look at the aspect of globalization. What is globalization? Globalization is a process by which the world is becoming increasingly interconnected as a result of massive increased trade and cultural exchange, hence the need for regional integration. Globalization can also be explained using what is prevailing in the world today, that a disease or virus that started in one particular city in China today has filled the entire world because of our cultural exchange, and people move from one country to the next country. These country boundaries are now losing their relevance. We are becoming more of a global village. That's what globalization is all about. Now, some other countries come together to create what are called regional integrations. Examples of regional integrations or regional groupings are things like COMESA, SADC, European Union, and African Union nations. So the grouping of countries together to have a common trade agreement, One of such successful regional groupings is the European Union, because the European Union have attained the status of economic union, and by 2002 the European Union adopted a single currency system. So I want us to look at what advantages are there in adopting a single currency system. Advantages of single currency. Number one is the removal of exchange rate risks. You remove the exchange rate risks. So there are no cross-border, there are no risks in cross-border trade between these member countries. Number two is the fact that financial markets are opened up across the region. Financial markets are opened up across the region, which makes it more flexible for industries to trade within those regions. So there is no need of changing from one currency to the other currency because you are using the same currency. The other advantage is the removal of conversion fees by banks. When you are converting from one currency to the other currency, there are those conversion fees that are charged. There are those differences in the prices, the selling and the buying price of a currency. So those, if countries are using the same currency, those are completely removed. The number 4 advantage of using a single currency is economic stability. So you find that there will be economic stability in the member countries. So let me move on and look at other benefits of belonging to a regional grouping. Other benefits of belonging to a regional grouping. Benefits of belonging to a regional grouping includes economies of scale. Markets will be opened up. Industries can now sell to a wider market than before, and so industries can enjoy economies of scale. Consumer welfare is increased because of things like competition, and the quality of goods and the prices, of course, becomes a benefit to consumers. The last one there is there are more political cooperations. Politicians also have to cooperate because they have to facilitate trade between these member countries in that regional grouping. The question we may all ask is Africa ready for such an economic and monetary union? The only challenges you may find with the African nations, these may be reasons why we can say Africa is not yet ready, is because of, in many countries in Africa, there is poor governance systems, too much internal political and social conflicts, weak financial systems, inadequate in physical structures, and stuff like that. That may make it a bit difficult for the African nations to achieve the economic union. Finally, in this video, let me look at the benefits of globalization, other benefits of globalization. Number one is the emergence of new growth markets. You have an expanded market for industries. Number two, it enhances competition. Remember, competition comes with it many benefits, like reduced prices, the quality of goods, the quality of services, and things like that. The other benefit of globalization includes growth of previously poor economies. There is an opportunity for poor economies to grow. World economic equalization is another benefit. International support for poorer nations is another benefit there. And close national business alliances and mergers, meaning that companies can now form alliances with other companies from other countries, and can form mergers as well and become bigger companies. Thank you so much for listening. I should remind you that this part I've just dealt with here is highly examined part, though it's purely theory. There are no calculations. So just make sure that you understand all these advantages and benefits and everything that I've shared today. And also, if this video has made sense to you, please remember to give it a thumb up. That's the only way I can have feedback from you, and that's the only way I can know what to emphasize on. And also post the questions that you have in a particular subject on the commentaries below. So in that commentary box, please send me the questions, or send me something that you'd want me to emphasize on and things like that. That's the only way we're going to have a beneficial interaction through this platform. Thank you so much.